I always say look for the consultant, not the salesperson. So my calls are very different where it's me asking a lot of questions. That's what you really should look for in an agent is somebody that wants to understand your situation.
I got connected to this guy from the last realtor we interviewed on the show, and she said I absolutely had to talk to Will Van Wickler in Maine. I've never been to Maine, although I'm going to New Hampshire and hopefully Maine in a couple months. So I didn't really know much about the real estate landscape out there until I started doing my research. And before I even talked to him, I uncovered that he was the perfect person to have on the show. Not only is Will under 25 years old, he's going to do over $50 million in real estate this year in his third and a half year in the business. He's the guy when it comes to investments, new construction, as well as a whole bunch of other things in the Maine and New Hampshire market. Will, welcome to the show today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
So we always like to go with like the origin story, right? Like a lot of agents, they have some pivotal moment in their career where they kind of figure it out and their business skyrockets. You didn't necessarily have that because your first year at the age of I'm assuming 19, you closed 20 transactions. So you've been doubling your business ever since, but how did you get started? What's your hero? What's your origin story?
Yeah, so I've always worked, and through high school, I was really into information technology. So I actually started to go to school for information technology, cybersecurity, but always had to work. So I had a small little consulting company where I would consult small businesses or individuals just with technology needs. So maybe helping set up their network or just helping them troubleshoot stuff. So I was actually consulting for a real estate investor, private property owner, had about 30 units in his portfolio. Just started asking questions about real estate investment because it's the cool thing to do, right? All these podcasts, everything. And I wanted to invest in real estate. He just said, hey, get your real estate license. It's a good part-time job. You get access to deals first. So I did and haven't looked back since.
Well, it's super interesting you say that because when I'm looking at my market here in Michigan and I'm looking at realtors who have been successful over the year, that's definitely a common thread that I see. People who at a young age wanted to get into real estate investing learned real estate so that they could do it themselves. And then once they saw what an opportunity was, in essence, learned more and then said, well, I have my license. I may as well help other people too. Because there's many ways to make money in this industry. So talk to us about your property investment experience. What are you doing? What's your portfolio looking like? What types of projects do you work on?
Yeah, so my rule has always been, acquire one property a year at least. Now it's scaled up with more income, which is awesome. But the first year I made great money in real estate, I bought my first rental property. So ever since then, it's been scaling up. And now I'm actually under contract on a big commercial property, which is awesome. And just always looking to grow and get more money in the market.
I think one of the really infectiously contagious things about the way that you've done it is every single transaction that you buy personally also becomes a story that I've seen you be able to tell on social media that attracts other people to you as a client, right? Like when you're listening to someone on Instagram, TikTok, whatever the platform might be, you find out that someone in their early 20s has bought a rental property that they now have a passive income off of, or like a high yield on a fix and flip. That's attractive, right? Like people want to know how you did it. They're curious, they watch it, but then also they think, well, if he can do it for himself, he can help me do that too. Has that been a big driver of business for you?
Absolutely. I use what I do as like the guinea pig, right? So I tell people, well, let me try it out first. Or I always say to clients, like, if you don't buy it, I will. And then I actually buy it. And they're like, whoa, you actually did that. It's huge for marketing. It creates trust with people. And I can walk the walk because ultimately, I'd say 9 out of 10 realtors don't invest in real estate. They might not even own real estate other than their primary house, maybe a second home. And they're pretty illiterate when it comes to finances. So that's just the network I've built. And I definitely market that. And it's helped build an exceptional business.
Let's dive into that a little bit deeper. So, a lot of people I think that listen to this show know that they should own a house or know that they should have some investment properties. We had one guy on the show who was up to 600 units and has been doing this for 15 years. And we had someone else on the show who just bought their first one. So there is a swing, but people know it's important. How, if you are wanting to educate your clients on investment properties and help and get them to choose you as the realtor, how do you educate them on the fact that you're the right choice? What questions should they be asking other realtors to basically eliminate those people who, like you said before, don't have the experience?
Yeah. I always just say I come from contribution, right? And I just bring so much value to people. It can sometimes be overwhelming, right? If they don't know, but I'm here to help you, whether it's your first unit or 500th unit. And the biggest thing I always say in marketing videos I do is asking agents, okay, well, how many properties do you own, right? It doesn't mean that the agent that owns 50 doors versus one door, the 50 guy is better. Maybe he's busier with that, but it's asking questions. Okay, so how did you do it? What are some tips you could give me? I always say look for the consultant, not the salesperson. So my calls are very different, where it's me asking a lot of questions. That's what you really should look for in an agent, is somebody that wants to understand your situation. They ask questions like, "Why are you doing this?" which I do, and it throws people off all the time. And what's the goal? If you get somebody that's asking you what's your goal, they can help you get there. But if you get somebody that's just an order taker, they're probably not the best fiduciary for the job.
Well, I love that. I like to say too, like, especially with like online leads or cold leads that you don't know that well, if you can ask them 20 questions, they also psychologically feel more invested in working with you, right? Because they've now told you all of these things. And especially if you can answer with good questions, send them a follow-up email or text that recaps what you learned about them, it's going to make them feel weird not using you. And it's going to dissuade them from going through that process all over again and getting super deep and personal with another realtor. So that's another huge reason to do that. But going deep with lots of questions is huge. Let's talk really quick about how you market and how you get some of this business, because you have development business coming in, you have rental business, you have traditional single family homes you're selling to buyers and sellers. So what's the full spread on your marketing and on your client acquisition?
Yeah, so it's pretty organic now. I've never paid for leads. I've never really done any of the strategies that maybe other people do: TV, radio, online, whatever, SEO. My social media marketing is targeted to the consumer. It's not targeted to like other realtors, or, targeted to myself, I think, which a lot of people are guilty of. So I always just thought, hey, what are questions the consumer has? Start doing the social media stuff. So that's going in the background. And then start to build relationships with, I call them influencers, right? So the people that are connected. I didn't have a sphere of influence, but I did a really good job for people that did have a sphere of influence, right? And that sphere became mine. So a lot of my business is past client referrals, or just referrals from maybe 5 to 10 influencers, as I call them, in the communities, in these niche groups. And then I just stay really focused on what I'm good at. And in niches, if you really just stay focused on that, the business will grow exponentially because you really don't have competition. So I've identified a few key parts of the market that I'm exceptional at, and people call to work with me. That's the biggest thing.
So you said two things that I think we need to unpack, and that those two words were influencers and niches. I know what you mean. You do not mean influencers like cute girls on TikTok. You mean influencers like people in your community who are mentors, who know everybody, who are well connected. I'm assuming that's what you mean, correct?
Absolutely. So a
How
good
how did you
example is like,
initially isolate who those people were, and like what kind of strategy did you use to get them to meet with you when you were, at that point you didn't have the experience necessarily?
right. So the biggest thing is look at the business they have and figure out, how are they doing it, right? So if you see somebody that's spending a ton of money on postcards or marketing, for instance, a property management company, probably not the guy for you. But if you see somebody that has a huge business and great reputation, they probably have a pretty relational style business, and you better believe they're like the mayor of the space, right? So it's finding like the mayors of these individual places. And a good example is like a property management company. I do a lot of referrals back and forth with them. They're an allied resource, which is something big. Make sure they're somewhat connected to real estate. And I just come from contribution. I always lead with what can I do to actually help you move your business forward? And in turn, business will come, but that's never why I go into the relationship.
I love that. So when you're talking to a property manager, I'm sure they get calls from realtors all the time saying like, "Hey, can you refer me things?" And those agents are coming from a position of, "What can you do for me?" which is a shitty kind of sales call to make. What
Right.
types of things are you using to get past the gatekeeper and to get them to be interested in hearing what you have to say?
Yeah, well, the first thing I'd say is start with somebody maybe newer in business, because it's way easier to gain their trust and you can help build each other's business. So that's what I did, one of my largest referral sources. And I just asked him, what would it take for me to earn your business and referral? I see you're referring somebody else right now. I think that's awesome, but I'd love to be that guy and real estate resource, and I'm willing to work for it. And then the biggest thing is, I always ask, what does your ideal client look like? Because when I do come across a referral, I want to make sure it's the right fit, not just assume. I see a lot of people, they mess this up. They just send kind of crappy referrals. My insurance person told me, she's like, this one guy always sends me these like unqualified referrals and never call me back. When I send a referral, it's great. And I'm very clear about that. And I always ask, what does a good referral look like to you?
I love that. Something that we do is every year we go to all the people that we gave referrals to. We call and say, "Hey, looks like we sent you 3 referrals: the Joneses, the Smiths, and the whoever else's. How were they? Were these the type of referrals that you want more of? Were these good? Did they go well? Any tips on how we could do a better job of supporting your business?" And we get 100% success rate on that call. And typically they're like, "Oh crap, I haven't referred you back anything recently. I need to get something over to you," or it's some other piece of value that they could offer. But I think like being cognizant of who you're referring and, like you said, making sure you're giving them what they need is absolutely huge. The second thing you said, Will, is you have a really keen eye for spotting the niches that you need to be in. Obviously, property management was one because it's so connected to both what you do with your clients, but also to rental properties. What are some other niches that you've kind of stumbled into or discovered have been a honeypot for you?
Yeah, so for me, it is, unique property. So second homes. So whether that's, on the lake or in the mountains. So very focused on second homeowners and the needs they have, as it's very different than the residential market. So I have different buckets, right? So we have second homes, so vacation, stuff like that. We have investment property. So 2 to 4 unit multifamily, single family, fix and flip. Land deals like that. We have new construction development, so focused on builder representation, subdivision marketing. And then we also have, I say they're the experienced buyer or seller. So I'm very good at working with, maybe it's the downsizer or upsizer. They've done a few real estate transactions. They know what happens, but maybe they don't know the process. I'm able to break it down in a professional way and work really well with entrepreneurs, busy people, stuff like that.
Well, I think one of the reasons you're able to do that is you have a huge focus on something that we've been talking about on this show since I'd say the market slowed down a year and a half ago. Although this week, ironically, is the busiest we've been in 3 years. So I don't think the slowdown is it's a permanent thing or anything. But that's creating your own opportunities, right? Like I know that in any market, you will be successful because you are the creator of opportunities. And then you're in essence just waiting for the right buyer or seller to come who wants to take advantage of that opportunity. How do you interwork those opportunities in your niches? Like for instance, when it comes to vacation home sales, how are you creating opportunities or delivering those opportunities to those clients?
Being a really good listener and having a really good intake call. I mean, I had a showing the other day, and it reminded me, I usually only show maybe 2 to 3 properties per client before they purchase. And she said, "Will, this is exactly what we've been looking for 4 years. Realtors have been sending us stuff forever. You found it." And it's not that it was really hard to find. It's just I listened. And I also tell people, I'm not going to send you stuff just to make small talk and make it look like I'm working. You might only hear from me once or twice a year, but you better believe it's going to be the right place for you because I actually listen and I care. I'm a fiduciary at the end of the day. So very detailed notes, asking good questions, and just knowing what's right for these people because I care about them ultimately.
Let's talk to clients for a second. So we do have some people who listen to the show who are not real estate agents, but maybe they're aspiring to be one, or maybe they want more insight into how our industry works. You mentioned that you only oftentimes show 1 or 2 properties to people because number one, you want to protect your time, but you want to protect their time. You value their time. How are you having that conversation? Describe to me what that conversation looks like ahead of time with that client when all the other realtors are putting them on a listing feed and they're just getting bombarded with any property that hits their filter, which usually isn't fine-tuned enough, versus the way you're doing it, where you're sending them only the perfect ones. How do you have that conversation ahead of time? Because I'm assuming if you don't, they think you're not doing anything.
Right. I just simply explained to them exactly what you did. I said, "Hey, we're going to set you up on an MLS search, but it's not because I expect you to do my job for me. It's mainly so you can see the pace of the market and get real-time updates faster than, the big Zillows and stuff like that work. But ultimately, I spend every single day searching for your property, and I'm your personal shopper, right? So I even go as far as, for some of my clients, I'm going to go actually preview the house for you and just tell you, here are the 10 things I hate about it, and here's why you shouldn't look at it. And it just saves people time. And I'm very upfront and honest. I'm the guy who says, we'll tell you no 50 times before I tell you yes. And better believe when I tell you yes, this is probably the house you're going to end up in. So people believe that. They know I'm authentic, and they know I'm doing the work for them, which is ultimately what real estate was, I think, a while ago. And technology's kind of diluted that and made it, just as a glorified door opening position.
Well, I think that's one of the most genius things. I hear so many realtors tell me when I ask them, like, "Hey, what do you do as a realtor?" They tell me, "Oh, well, I help people buy and sell properties." I'm like, "Oh, properties that were already on the internet that they found themselves, that you submitted an at asking price offer for, and you got lucky and it got accepted and it was an easy closing." That's 90% of our market. But when I think of like the situations where I've purchased a house recently, like I'm purchasing a house, I know exactly what I want. I don't want to go on 30 showings. I don't want to see the house for the first time myself and then find out that like the foundation's cracked, 30 other things are wrong. I want my realtor to go through it for me ahead of time, scope it out, and to in essence save me that hour so that when we go through it together, we're figuring out the details. We're figuring out how we can maximize this property as a rental. We're figuring out how I can make it suit my family's needs better. And I want you, in essence, to be prepared with that list of ideas so I can say yes, no, yes, no. And I can focus my brain power on my day job, because that is how I afford to buy more properties with you, my real estate agent. But I don't hear that enough when I ask agents like what value they're offering their clients. And especially guys, like we're all coming up on July, August, all this, if you want to believe all the commission crap out there. Yeah, it's happening. But if you're offering tremendous value, it's irrelevant to you, right? So let's talk. I'm going to jump back to the investment side really quickly. How are you helping clients crunch numbers and decide if a property is a solid investment for them? I know part of that goes to their goals, but I would just love any insight you have when it comes to crunching numbers, because you obviously are a personal investor, but also you're advising clients on income properties all the time.
Yeah, so what you said kind of sparked the light bulb moment of like solid deal. And everybody's like, oh, I want a good deal. And I'll ask them, what does that mean? Right? Is it a 20% cash on cash return? Are you focused on cash flow? Are you focused on tax savings? Is it appreciation? Once I identify what a good deal is to them, I'll go find it and I'll show them why it's a good deal. So I help underwrite these properties with my clients. I explain maybe why it's a good deal, why it's a bad deal, and then also the value add. So I'm always looking at, well, how do we force appreciation, bring more value to the property, whether that's through renovation or just improving it. And I'm actually helping them underwrite the deal. Now, everybody should do their own due diligence. It's all my opinion, but I'm using logic, facts, and real-time information that I have access to help people make informed decisions and also tell them no a lot of times. I talk a lot of people out of buying real estate and buying rental property because maybe they're not meant for it or it's just not the right opportunity. So I'm never afraid to just be totally upfront and honest, but it's by doing my homework. Agents should go read a book, figure out what a cap rate is, figure out the metrics, and then understand what the client's actually looking for.
I love that. So let's talk about golden letters. When I Googled you, Will, the first thing that came up was that you were the master of golden letters. And I want to know what that means for you and how you've used these.
Yeah, so it just all comes back down to bringing opportunity to people. So early on in my real estate career, I didn't have a lot of listing business. So I had to figure out, how do I find listing business? And it's by finding qualified sellers that need to sell their home, solving a problem. So I started this marketing campaign, reaching out to sellers, seeing who had a real estate need, and it works. But it's because I come from contribution and I believe I can truly help people. And I'm not just trying to sell them or market something. So I have this marketing program. It's called the Golden Letter. And it's a simple MOFIR, make offer for immediate response. I'm just asking people, do you want to sell your house? Yes or no? And if they do, I'm here to help and convert the business from there.
So what does that letter say?
Literally just says, dear Will, would you be interested in selling your house at 123 Main Street to a client of mine? If so, call me on my cell phone.
That's awesome. Ultra simple. There's no allure. You're not trying to promise them something that they're not. Walk me through that phone call. So ring, ring, ring. Hi, Will. I got your letter. It looks like you have a client who wants to buy my house. Who are you? What is this all about?
Yeah, so it's super simple. It's like, Matt, thanks so much for taking the time to give me a call. As I'm sure you know, there's just simply not enough homes on the market. And the folks we're working with have seen everything out there. And instead of sitting and waiting, we're reaching out to homeowners like yourself in areas where they want to be and seeing who might be interested in having a conversation about the sale of their home. Is that something you've thought about recently?
Yeah,
Simple.
yeah. We had some kids moving out of the house, so I think in the next couple of years we were going to sell. But is now the best time?
Well, I'm curious, if your house sold, where would you go?
That's a great question. We'd probably move out of state into a condo that'd be easier to maintain. That my wife wants to be warm, all that stuff.
Yeah, that's exciting. I totally get one to get out of the weather. Well, what I'd propose is I can answer all your questions and actually figure out maybe what the best timing is and give you a real-time market number that the algorithms can't even keep up with. So I could maybe pop by this afternoon and just take a quick look and meet.
That sounds great, and I love this. Right? So
Yeah.
you were polite. You asked me more questions to get me thinking. You caught me off guard with a question that I didn't think you were going to go to. And
Yeah.
then from there, you went immediately in for the meeting where you know you are going to be most successful. If you can get belly to belly, face to face with someone, you're typically going to win in that situation. So what's your number, Will? So you send out 1,000 letters. How many phone calls? How many meetings? How many listings?
Yeah. So for every thousand you send out, usually two listings. Back in
That's
a
awesome.
different market. Now, things have changed, right? It's a little bit harder to get business, but these things still work and they're still really, really good. It all comes down to converting the business. Like you said, it's belly to belly. I can overcome objections that come up in person. Over the phone's not the best way to do it.
Okay. How are you creating opportunities for your community through developments and through relationships with builders?
Yeah, listening and taking great notes. So when people say, hey, if you found this, I'd buy it. It's actually remembering that and writing it down, right? I have a spreadsheet at all times with maybe 50, 60 names on it. When I see the right opportunity, I actually follow through and send that to them. And then I also meet with builders and figure out what's your goal this year? How many units? Okay. How can I make that happen for them? So I've successfully taken builders from one closing to 10 closings a year, right? And then they tell their other builder friends, or they tell people at the lumber yard, or things like that, and it snowballs from there. But it all just comes down to following through. That's it.
So walk me through the details on that. So you meet with the builder and they're not expecting you to say that you can grow their business. They're expecting you want to be their preferred agent or something. But then you find out that they want to grow and you find them the land that they can buy. If so, how do you do it? Like what is the next step there?
Yeah, it's the language I use. I always tell people I want the opportunity to earn your business. So what does it look like to do that? Right? And maybe they'll say grow, maybe they'll say, speed. I don't know, but until I ask that question, I've got no shot. So I take their pain point and I solve it.
Okay,
That's really it.
so give me an example of a couple of the pieces of the pain points that you've heard that you've then been able to solve and how.
Yeah, deal flow. So not getting land deals come in, right? The other thing is marketing, right? And what does marketing actually mean to the builder, or what does it mean to the consumer, right? Because us realtors, loan officers, we have our own idea of what we need to do, but let's figure out what they need. And one of the builders I work with was helping build his personal brand, right? So that was a big thing. And he's like, my agent gets photos done, but not photos for my portfolio. It doesn't help me build a website, right? So deal flow, personal brand development. For some builders I work with, they're like, honestly, Will, I'm too involved. I just need to build the house and you sell. Great. We'll be super hands on with that. And then some of them are like, we just need really good paperwork and compliance. So until I ask that question and really figure out their pain points, I can't help. But I've learned the pain points for each of my builders and help them bring systems and processes into their business. So they kind of have to use me, right? It's a true relationship. And it's not like, my realtor, he gets all the deals because we're family friends. It's like, no, I work with Will because he's helped me build this business and we're business partners. That's how they look at our relationship.
I love that. So you're doing all of this in Maine and New Hampshire, where the average statewide price is around $300,000, but you have built your average price up to double and a half that at over $700,000. How have you necessarily done that? And like, what tips would you give someone who wanted to, slowly increase their purchase price? Obviously, the market's doing a lot of the work for us, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, great question. It's just focusing your efforts on where you want to be. So instead of just being everything to everybody, niche down and just focus on whether it's demographics, geographics, anything like that. I've decided to focus my business on, experienced buyers and sellers. Doesn't mean I don't help out a few first-time home buyers a year, and it's super fun to do that, right? They're low dollar transactions, but they're great relationships. I just focus my time and energy on generating business in the upper price category. And it's not because, I like, walking in big homes and I like driving fancy cars. It's just that's what I've identified as my specialty. And when you identify a niche or specialty and you become the best at it, those people know other people, right? So I sold a property for 650,000 to a guy. Then I sold this investment property for 350, but then he referred his neighbor to me for 2.5 million. I sold his house for 1 million, right? So it's the $1 million sellers know the $2 million sellers, and it's just building your sphere of influence and your network around what you actually want to do, not just everything that comes to you.
I love that. What is your post-close follow-up with your clients? Like, what if I'm a closed client of yours, what should I be expecting to hear from you? How often? What types of things throughout the course of the next couple of years?
I am unorthodox in the way where I don't have this like 36 touch drip plan,
You don't
wish
spam all of
everybody
your million
happy
dollar
birthday.
customers?
I don't. I wish them a happy birthday just genuinely because I care. And I also tell people my job really starts after closing because I'm so well connected, right? So if you need anything, let me act as your concierge and save you hours of frustration and thousands of dollars by working with the wrong person. So I oftentimes, my follow-up plan is clients reaching out to me for help because they know I'm so willing to help it after the transaction, even after I've gotten paid, whether that's just referred somebody to pave a driveway the other day, right? Or my carpenter or whatever they need, not even just house related stuff. I'm here to help. And people know that because I make it abundantly clear in the transaction.
I love that. You explain your value better than anyone that I've talked to in recent months, and people understand it and then call you as a result of that. I mean, I think you've really built a business that most people want, but because they're trying to be everything to everyone, haven't been able to actualize. Will, you're extremely well spoken. I appreciate all the advice you've given everyone today. If someone has a client moving to Maine, New Hampshire, and they want to get a hold of you, how would they do that?
Yeah, easiest way is willvanwickler.com. They can book a call with me or just simply reach out if you're an agent, have some questions. I'm also on all social media platforms and do a bunch of social media content out there as well.
Awesome. Will, thank you so much for your advice today. I appreciate you.
My pleasure. Thank you.